Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. We talk about the problems people face in their day to day lives. Let's start with the video. My stepmom is no longer allowed in my house, and I don't think that will ever change. Actions have consequences no matter who you are, even though some people think they have some form of immunity. I'll just say that my biological mom is not in the picture and she has never cared to be. Apart from giving birth to me, I can't think of anything that she has done for me. When I was much younger, it hurt me a lot because I thought I did something wrong to make her hate me, that she had to leave me. Now I know better. My dad married my stepmom when I was 8 years old. Now that I am an adult, I can understand why he got married, even though I wish he didn't. My stepmom pretended to have a sweet spot for me while she was dating my dad. It was her way of winning him, but I was never blinded by it. I could tell because of how she treated me when he wasn't around. I had tried to tell my dad, but he thought I just didn't like her because she wasn't my mom. So he would tell me that having a mother figure who was present in my life was good for me. So I should learn to accept her. I knew that he needed the companionship too, maybe even more than I needed a mother. And I wanted him to be happy, so I decided to tolerate my stepmom. She wasn't very horrible to me. It was just that she didn't care as much as she wanted my dad to think she did. She did the most basic things for me and never went the extra mile, while I didn't expect her to. After all, I wasn't her biological child. She had never been married and had no kids before meeting my dad. My dad and Claudia tried to have kids for years, and they finally got one after 10 years. My sister is 6 years old now, and she is so adorable. I really love her, and I'll do anything for her. As you may have already figured out, I am many years older than she is. Anyways, to the meat of the story. Today was my wedding. My dad missed it because of my stepmom. When I got to the venue, I was surprised to see that none of my parents were there. I called my dad and he told me Tessa was missing, so he and Claudia were trying to find her. I was so scared. This couldn't be happening on my wedding day. I honestly would have preferred to call it off. But my dad reminded me that we had people who had taken time off. Some had traveled just to be present on my special day, and I couldn't let them down. He made me promise to wait an hour, and if he wasn't back, I would go ahead with the wedding. They hadn't found Tessa by the time the hour was up, so we had to start the wedding. I was devastated. My father was the most important person in the world to me, aside from my husband. He was supposed to walk me down the aisle, and now he isn't even present. I was hurt, but at the same time felt guilty about being annoyed because my sister was missing. A few minutes after we had said our vows and were about to start the reception, my dad called me to say they were on their way. When they arrived, I discovered that Tessa had gone home with her friend. The school let that happen because her best friend's mom was also authorized to pick her up when her mom couldn't. Claudia acted like she didn't know, and she was so sorry about everything. I didn't believe her because I knew that something didn't add up. After everything died down, I asked Tessa why she went home with her best friend when her mom didn't tell her to. She said, "Mommy told me to go with Ryan, but not tell anyone." She made my dad miss my wedding on purpose and made it look like it was Tessa's fault for missing her. At this time, we were basically done with the reception and my husband and I were about to leave. My dad kept apologizing for missing my wedding, and then I told him not to. Instead, he should blame the woman he married. He said that was a serious accusation. I told him it wasn't an accusation if it was true, and I asked Tessa to tell me what she told me earlier which she did for all to hear. I could see the rage on my father's face and how he tried to suppress it. My dad asked my stepmom if what Tessa said was true. She didn't respond to the point that my dad had to jolt her out of her thoughts with a shout. I was shocked to hear all the things she said. She went on about how my dad only cared for me, gave me everything I wanted, and often neglected her and Tessa. She said she wanted the first wedding that my father would be in as the father of the bride and walk down the aisle to be Tessa's wedding and no one else. As far as she was concerned, Tessa was the first and only daughter. She said I had had all the attention all my life, so it was time for Tessa to get some too. She was jealous that my dad would take me down the aisle. Tessa was just 6, for Christ's sake, so she was ready to wait for another 20-something years for that to happen when she could have capitalized on my wedding as an opportunity. She is the closest thing to a mother I have ever had, so all she had to do was accept me as her daughter and enjoy the moment as the mother of the bride. My biological mom wasn't invited to the wedding, so it's not like 2 of my mothers were fighting for me or something. My wedding was not the time for her to feel unsure about her and Tessa's place in the family. As far as I'm concerned, none of what she said made sense. It's just sad that it took this many years for my dad to really know who she is. We can't undo what's done. It would forever be that my dad missed my wedding for no reason, which really hurts. My stepmom didn't show any sign of remorse. She just said it like she was stating a fact and expected everyone to understand and reason with her. She has always been like that, but today it was so annoying. She found it difficult to admit when she was wrong and would do anything to avoid apologizing. She never took responsibility for what she did, which was unacceptable this time. She had literally tampered with our lives here. This time, she had gone too far and she was going to pay for it somehow. My dad was too disappointed and he didn't want to make matters worse since it was my wedding, so he dismissed everyone and said we would continue this later. We didn't leave for my honeymoon immediately because we had planned a Thanksgiving service before traveling. The service was the day after my wedding. My stepmom tried to behave like nothing had happened the day before. She was now desperately trying to be nice to me. She was overly compensating by being extra nice to me. She gave compliments and was all over the place trying to make sure everything was set even when everything had been planned months ago, so there was nothing really for her to do. Honestly, all I needed from her was a genuine apology. It didn't look like I would get it. That's why she was doing so much so we could move on. She didn't know that there is no moving on from this. Even though it won't change anything, she still has to admit that she was wrong and apologize to me, my dad, and my husband properly before we can even think of moving on. My husband has always thought that my family was crazy, which further proves the point. His family dynamics are very different from mine. They are more quiet prime and proper families, while mine, in comparison, is ghetto. The church was close to our new home, so we had our Thanksgiving lunch there. I was on the verge of canceling because I didn't want to deal with my stepmom any longer, but if being in a relationship with my husband has taught me anything, it's not to act brashly and to always look at the bigger picture. I was struggling, but I decided that canceling would do more harm than good. She tried everything to get me to speak to her, but I refused. This was not going to pass, and everyone would move on. There was so much tension in the air. I'm sure everyone was waiting for me to blow up at her. She made a statement during lunch and referred to me as her daughter. That did it for me. I told her that she had no right to call me that. There was no use pretending that she cared for me or wanted the best for me because her actions have proven otherwise. I told her that I didn't want her or anything that had to do with her near me, including Tessa. I was done tolerating her because I wanted my dad to be happy. So I asked her to leave and never to come back to my house. Lunch was over, so that was everyone's cue to leave. Some of my friends stayed to cheer me up and help me finish packing for my honeymoon. It's been months after my wedding and things are not any better. I haven't seen or spoken to my stepmom since my Thanksgiving lunch. I have excused myself from anything that would bring her and me together. My dad tried to talk me into reconciling with her, but I wouldn't listen. I didn't want her in my life. He asked me a striking question on one of those days. He asked me if I was willing to give up my relationship with Tessa, but I didn't respond. I was too annoyed to think of Tessa, but now I feel horrible for putting her in the middle of all this. She didn't do anything wrong, but I punished her. My dad told me that Tessa really missed me, and a few times she had cried as she asked for me, and that hurt me. But I wasn't still ready to let everything go, so I did nothing. Am I doing the same thing my bio mom did to me? Tessa, I know it's not exactly the same, but now I feel guilty. NTA, I think you just need time to let it go, then come back into Tessa's life. I can't imagine what you must feel because your dad missed your wedding. NTA, your dad could have done more than just shout at her to get the truth. It doesn't seem like he took charge of the situation. He needs to make his wife make amends, even if it's by force. Me and my fiance have been together for a few years now. She's met my daughter, Kylie, 15, and I think they clicked well. However, the issue is I am not okay with her parenting my daughter. I don't want her to dictate or try to parent her. A lot of people may not like that, but this is just what me and my daughter are comfortable with. What I and her have discussed before I engaged and allowed her to move in. This wasn't sprung up on my fiance either. She was told this way before we got together, dated or engaged, so this wasn't new. I told her that I get if she doesn't like that, but this is the boundary that I make for me and my daughter. She seemed to be understanding of that when she was told before. Look up nacho parenting if you'd like. Again, I have no issue with someone not liking this. Never have been. I have an issue with her randomly having an issue with it, even though she was made aware. She moved in a few months ago. It started off with her taking her to school. I had no intention of her taking my daughter to school or thinking she was going to do this, but she got up 1 hour earlier to bring my daughter to school. Now, she ended up going to my daughter and telling her that she wasn't allowed to go out because she has to do her homework. This ended in an argument between them because my daughter was trying to get a word in and she was cutting her off, just saying, "Nope, you can't go out." Once I walked in, I told her that she's not going to a hangout. She's going to a library because of a test she has, and she will study on that in a group her teacher made for her. She looked shocked and said, "Well, she doesn't need to be going out like that anyway. She won't focus in a group." I said that that's not her decision to make. I drove Kylie and came back to my fiance fuming. She said that I completely embarrassed her and that she's probably not even studying. I was upset and said that again, she has no right to try and dictate what my daughter does. And if there is such a serious concern, come to me about it. But she doesn't get to argue with my kid like that. She said, "Oh, well, I can drop her off and pick her up from school and do all the inconvenient things. But when it comes to discipline, I can't." I said, "No, and she needed to stop thinking she can show me she can parent. It's not about being a parent. That wasn't the issue. She was told before this boundary we had, and it's not something she can just slowly break down. I said that she did that by choice and went out of her way to make sure I couldn't say anything until after. And that was her choice. She left, saying she was too mad to talk right now. I feel like I'm being set up in a way. She was told about this, and I don't know why it's being taken as something she can fix over time. NTA, you set a hard and fast boundary, and she violated it, and then violated it again, and then got mad at you for calling her on it. If your fiancé can't get this straight in her head, then you may need to make some hard choices about what kind of future your relationship has. Enormous red flags. She's ignoring your and your Kylie's completely reasonable boundaries, then giving you the silent treatment when you confronted her, and also tried to deflect the blame on you, saying you embarrassed her. Completely NTA, but I think you should seriously reconsider your relationship with your fiancé. My take is that she thought that over time, as you grew closer as a family, she would be able to make decisions involving Kylie's parenting. However, this whole situation comes off as super controlling behavior from her part. Age for drinking is 18 here. I work in a club with insane hours, so some of my colleagues and I decided to have a few drinks at my place after work one Saturday morning. There were 4 of us, aged 32, 27, 25, and 19. We also watch people get trashed for a living, so it's understood we must know our limits. Nobody was forced to drink anything. We'd all worked 10 hours on our feet, so it was pretty much 4 women seated around a coffee table loaded with whiskey, tequila, gin, and mixers. And Jenny, 19 female, kept pouring out shots while we slowly sipped our drinks. We spoke about the rapid rate of drinking, and everyone agreed they were tired and would Uber home when they were good and drunk. And then the tears started. Jenny sobbed out of happiness, loneliness, and then just drunkenness. And then she started spam calling her ex. She'd lose her phone and then demand I find it so her ex could fetch her. Spoiler, he never came. She refused to go home, even with one of us escorting, so I put her in my bed and told her to try to rest. She asked me to cuddle her, so I held her for a bit and she began grinding on me, so I immediately excused myself. A while later, she emerged and got back on the couch and began the ex-calling, losing her phone in the blankets routine. And then she threw up on the couch. And when I went into my room, I saw she had thrown up in my bed. It had spread and soaked for nearly an hour. Yum. All of this was treated with a glassy-eyed dismissiveness that our colleagues tried to explain away by her age. Literally every blanket in my apartment came in contact with puke. When she was finally soberer, nearly 6 hours later, where she had napped on the only clean couch, I got her to commit to leaving. She saw the vomit and acted like it wasn't there. And I finally snapped and asked her who she thought would be cleaning up all her puke and where she thought I'd be sleeping. She sheepishly agreed to having my bed and linens cleaned. But since then, she's been dragging her feet. The bed got cleaned 2 days later. She did not care that I had to stay at my partner's place. And she hasn't returned the sheets she asked to dry clean herself and gets upset when I ask for updates without greeting or acting super friendly. She excused her behavior with alcohol, and our colleagues are saying she's just young and going through things and I'm being too harsh. But this just reeks of entitlement. I've been the drunk girl, and I've jumped through hoops to rectify my drunk mistakes, but it seems like she thinks my life will go on without a bed or any blankets in my home. I'm a broke student working in the service industry, and none of this is easy for me. Am I being an inconsiderate a-hole? NTA, but don't take drunk people home anymore. If she puked once, she would have been in the bathroom. Unfortunately, you should have taken the loss and just cleaned everything yourself. Been there and done it. I cleaned up after my friend and let her know she was no longer welcome to come to my house drunk. I stuck her in the tub and she slept there. She threw up some more in the bucket while I cleaned my bed. Thank God my mom enforced having a waterproof mattress cover. NTA, you weren't inconsiderate at all. You let a drunk person stay at your place and throw up in multiple locations and didn't ask her to leave until she had the ability to do so. Since then, you are right, she should be going out of her way to make it up to you. Sure, she is young and had a bad drunk night. You don't want her punished, you just want to be left whole for her decisions. Go in, say, "Hello, how are you?" and then tell her she either needs to return your items, cleaned, or she needs to pay you X amount by X day. Maybe payday? Just be calm but very firm. "Jenny, I need my sheets and items back by tomorrow, and if you can't do that, then I need to replace them ASAP. You threw up on every blanket and sleeping surface I have, and I need my items cleaned and back to me. Or I need the money you owe me. Please get me X money and items by the end of the week." You can tell the other people you work with that you are being kind. You aren't holding this against her, but you can't foot the bill of destroyed items either. And even children understand there are consequences to their